now the latest ITV News Meridian in the south.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south.
We've got something to say.
Hundreds of operations cancelled as junior doctors stage a 24-hour strike. More walkouts are threatened.
Keep your dog under control. The warning from a Wiltshire sheep farmer who's threatening to shoot animals which attack his flock.
A never-ending road. The veteran motorist who's determined to keep on going. But just how old do you think he is?
And chubby as well as cheeky. Why these visitors to our parks and gardens are looking more portly than usual. Good evening. Hundreds of operations were cancelled across the region today as junior doctors walked out in a row over new contracts. It's the first strike of its kind in 40 years.
Yes, the government says change is needed to improve the quality of care at weekends. But unions say junior doctors will work too many hours, putting patients at risk.
Well, around 40 operations had to be cancelled at the Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth.
15 were postponed at the Royal Surrey County Hospital, while health chiefs at the Royal Sussex had to cancel 35 operations there.
In Southampton, it was mainly outpatient appointments affected, with more than 130 cancelled.
In a moment, we'll hear from our political correspondent Phil Hornby, who's at Westminster for us this evening. But first, Sam Holder reports now on the situation here in the south.
The junior doctors who normally keep our hospitals running, outside in the cold, on strike for the first time since 1975, meaning reduced service and dozens of cancelled operations for patients across the south. Hundreds of junior doctors joined a rally in Southampton city centre. And medics formed a picket line at the Royal Hampshire in Winchester. And at the Queen Alexandra in Portsmouth, more than 100 people gathered outside the doors and took part in a sing-along.
You can save us, don't let them break us. We are your doctors.
They're in dispute with the government over a proposed new contract. An 11% basic pay rise is on offer, but junior doctors say the overall amount they earn won't increase, and they could be forced to work long and unsociable hours.
I believe the contract as it stands now would mean tired doctors, and tired doctors make mistakes. And I'm someone who signed up for this profession to care for patients, and I want to provide them the best care possible.
For us, it's not about just clocking off at the end of the day. We care about our patients. We want to make sure that they've had their optimum care in the day, and we don't want to leave any loose ends untied.
Almost all the doctors I've spoken to today say they're on strike because the contract on offer puts patients' lives at risk, and there seems to be broad support amongst members of the public for their action today. More than 2/3 of people say they support the strike, according to the most recent Ipsos Mori poll. But the industrial action means that around 10% of planned treatment has had to be postponed. Former nurse Patricia Thompson arrived at Worthing Hospital unsure of whether her cataract operation would go ahead.
I'm totally against any form of industrial action by medical staff. I don't think it's professional. What's happened to the Hippocratic Oath?
Well, I think the first important thing to say is that we were extremely reluctant to take this action. No one wanted to do this.
Today's action has been criticised by the government, but the British Medical Association says it's necessary to protect doctors and patients in the future. And with 2 more strikes planned, patients across the south could see even more disruption. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Well, as Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn blamed the government for the strike going ahead, a shadow health minister said NHS doctors were given no choice but to take this action.
Well, with more reaction from Westminster today, here's our political correspondent Phil Hornby.
Well, an industrial dispute like this is a political dispute too, of course, with the government saying it has a mandate to get the NHS working at full throttle 7 days a week. The MP for Lewis is a former nurse, and with more strikes planned, I asked her what she would say to the doctors.
Well, I'd urge the BMA and Department of Health, to get back round the table and to thrash this out, because there is only a couple of issues that are outstanding. And what does a strike achieve? Actually, it doesn't achieve anything. We know there's issues and we know we need to resolve them. And actually, it's patients who are suffering at the end of the day. I've been talking to people in my constituency who've had appointments delayed and operations cancelled, and actually they're the real losers in all of this.
When you look at the opinion polls, it seems like most people are backing the doctors in this. Have the government got it wrong?
Well, it's probably not been handled initially as well as it could have been, and that's kind of escalated to what we have today.
It has to go back to the negotiating table. The power of the case that the junior doctors are putting, it seems to me, is very strongly supported by the public, and indeed is very clearly a position of a minister really trying to impose his will on a negotiation rather than discussing properly the points that the junior doctors have to make.
Well, as always, this will get settled somehow. There will be compromise on both sides. But the message from here tonight is that must happen soon.
Phil Hornby reporting there. Well, staying with hospitals, and the Queen Alexandra in Portsmouth says unprecedented demand on its emergency department yesterday was behind a delay in people being transferred from ambulances onto wards. At one point, 12 ambulances were waiting outside with patients on board. One elderly woman who had fallen down a flight of stairs had to wait more than 3.5 hours in the car park. Her son-in-law spoke to us as they waited to be seen.
I actually went and asked a couple of the doctors. No one wants to give a name, but they said this is a common occurrence. It's happening every day. And with no major incidents going on, and we get this type of problems. They spend up to 2 to 3 hours in the ambulance, and they've got another 6 hours in the corridors. The hospital can't cope. They're actually admitting that, and they need people to do something about it.
A farmer from Wiltshire is threatening to shoot dogs let off the lead on his land after a number of sheep on his farm were attacked.
Yes, Owen Singer lost 4 ewes over Christmas and the New Year. He's backed by the NFU, who say sheep worrying is costing farmers over £1 million each year. You may find some of the images in Robert Murphy's report upsetting.
The signs may have been vandalised, but you get the point. There are sheep here and dogs must be kept under control. But 4 sheep have been killed in these fields near Westbury in Wiltshire in recent weeks.
It's horrifying to see myself, and it's obviously horrifying for the sheep. Over Christmas we've lost 3 just before Christmas Day, and there was no dog or owner present when we got there, but the sheep were caught in fences, caught on top of hedges, and we had a leg torn, an udder torn, and then another sheep was very stressed, it'd been bitten in the head, and we brought it back to a hospital paddock and brought it inside, but eventually it died.
Owen Singer took these pictures of a sheep's damaged leg after an attack a few months ago. This animal survived. The ones in the last few weeks weren't so lucky. He has 120 Wiltshire Horn ewes. Most of them will currently be pregnant, so any fatality would be doubly serious. Dog owners can be charged after cases of suspected sheep worrying. The fine is up to £1,000. And the NFU says this is a big problem for farmers. It costs the industry about £1.2 million a year.
The dog's off into the field of sheep. Yeah. So they're running.
And Owen Singer has warned that if he sees a dog attacking his flock, he will shoot it if he feels he has to.
Ultimately, I suppose if it did come to it, if we couldn't get it under control, I would shoot a dog. I don't want to, I never have had to, but ultimately, if there was no option, that would be my final thing.
The law would be on his side. It would be a final resort, a sad one, but Owen Singer or any other livestock farmer could shoot to kill a dog worrying their animals. Robert Murphy, ITV News.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, Simon with a wind of change in the weather forecast, plus...
Fast, agile and costing £6 million. The new high-speed ferry taking shape here in the south.
And for more on all of our stories, why not head to our website itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095 or get in touch via Facebook or send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
Tenants in Brighton and Hove are seeing some of the biggest rent increases anywhere in the country, with landlords raising prices by an average of 18% in a year.
Yes, according to a new survey, a typical two-bedroom flat in Brighton now costs almost £1,080 a month to rent.
That's 65% of an average monthly salary. Self-employed mother of one, Jane Grogan, pays £1,450 a month.
I was pretty shocked. Not much difference from London prices, really. I was expecting that if we moved quite a distance away, even though I know it's a great city, it's very popular, I was still expecting a considerable drop in the amount, but no, that wasn't the case. I think it's appalling. I don't know how we're supposed to, you know, keep up with the rise when wages aren't increasing at the same rate and there's not a lot of money left for anything else, to be honest. It's just disgusting.
Well, earlier I spoke to the MP for Brighton Pavilion, Caroline Lucas, who is calling for tighter rent controls and has been debating the issue in Parliament today. Caroline Lucas, thank you for joining us this evening. The Living Rent Commission will aim to get a fairer deal for renters in Brighton. How would it work?
Well, it'll be modelled on the Living Wage Commission, which has been really instrumental in establishing what a living wage would look like. And in the same way, we want a Living Rent Commission, which would establish what affordable really means, because the government uses the word affordable housing very loosely when they mean 80% of market rent. That isn't affordable. So essentially, a Living Rent Commission would be a process whereby experts and others can come together to work out what rents should be, affordable rents should be around the country, and then also to design ways of reaching that kind of rental.
Brighton is a victim of its own success, isn't it? Two growing universities, and anywhere where people want to live and work is going to see rents go up.
Well, you're right that many people want to live in Brighton and Hove, and to that extent it is a victim of its own success. But on the other hand, I think nobody recognises that rents at the level they are today are possible or sustainable. We just heard new news today that says that for the first time we've now broken through the £1,000 a month barrier when it comes to average rents for just a two-bedroom flat. So, you know, there are real problems in Brighton. People cannot afford to live there, and we've got to take serious action to remedy that.
But many investors go into buy-to-lets because they want to get a better return on their savings. If the rent landlords can charge is capped, is there then a risk that the availability of rented homes may go down?
Well, certainly the consequences of caps on rent would need to be modelled, it would need to be looked at, the lessons learnt from other countries. But the evidence is that in some other countries they've managed to have caps on rents that do work. They link them with longer tenancies. There would obviously need to be a transitional period whereby landlords are not suddenly confronted with a completely different position overnight. So these are all questions which the Commission should examine. But the bottom line is that the current status quo simply is not sustainable for the vast majority of renters in Brighton.
Caroline Lucas, MP for Brighton Pavilion, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, we asked you for your opinions on the cost of renting accommodation.
Yes, Anna Deacon says, my landlord put my rent up by £250 a month in October. I'm now having to find somewhere else for me and the kids to live. It wouldn't be so bad if it was a well-maintained property.
Faye Souter from Brighton told us, I live with my disabled mother. We struggle every month to pay for our private rented bungalow, which is suitable for her needs. The prices here are forcing people to move away.
Barry O'Sullivan says, I had a 16% rent increase 4 weeks before Christmas.
Nice. And Hayley Matthews thinks all rents are getting out of hand and says we rented it would be cheaper to buy, but we can't get a mortgage, so we have no other choice but to pay extortionate rents.
Thanks, as always, for all of your views.
More headlines from around our region now, and CCTV images have been released of a group of men police want to speak to in connection with a street brawl in Bournemouth on Christmas Day. 10 men were involved in the incident at the Jug in Post Office Road before moving out onto Richmond Hill. A 24-year-old man was treated in hospital for a stab wound.
A lorry driver suffered minor injuries when his vehicle overturned in Hampshire this morning. It happened on the A32 near Fareham. The slip road had to be closed while recovery work took place.
A charity in Newbury that helps children with special needs has received a grant of £330,000. Organisers say the money from the big lottery fund will enable Swings and Smiles to continue running its Phoenix Resource Centre for the foreseeable future. More than 250 families use it.
It's now exactly 6:15. Let's cross to London now to find out what's making the national news headlines. With the details, here's Mark Austin.
The first doctors' strike for decades is taking place in England. Thousands are staging a 24-hour walkout the Health Secretary has called completely unnecessary. He is urging more talks. Tourists are targeted in a terror attack in Istanbul. At least 10 people are dead, many of them Germans. The Turks say Islamic State did it. In court, the man wanted here over the murder of a former EastEnders actress faces a judge in Ghana. And the last picture is released of David Bowie as tribute concerts are planned in his memory. Join Mary Nightingale and me at 6:30.
Now, it will be fast, agile and cost £6 million. Work is underway on a new high-speed passenger ferry to link the Isle of Wight with the mainland.
Yes, Redjet 6 is being built on the island and is a valuable boost to the local economy and employment. It's on schedule to be in service by July. Dave Russell has been to see how the work is progressing.
It's been 6 months of hard work, but already this new multi-million-pound Isle of Wight passenger ferry is clearly taking shape. The vessel, which is due to be delivered this summer, will carry up to 275 passengers between Southampton and Cowes, where it's currently being built.
I think we've only got 2 non-islanders at the moment. The rest of them are all islanders, yeah. And we're up to about 50 in total now, if you take the manufacturing work and the logistics, stores, procurement, and back up.
Redjet 6, as it'll be known, will give passengers a smoother, more economical ride and will offer them a new ship-to-shore Wi-Fi system and the ability for people to charge their phone. So there's one question that has to be asked.
New vessel, higher fares?
No, definitely not. This is an investment, it's a £6 million investment that we are making ourselves. We operate in a competitive market. There is no way that it will be reflected through into pricing at all.
The company building the vessel say they're looking at other contracts, which is good news for some young islanders.
Yeah, I considered leaving the island, but I decided to stay and luckily I did. Hopefully I'll be here for the long term. My apprenticeship should be 3 years long, and then after that I hope to continue working here.
Unlike previous Redjets, this vessel has got 4 engines rather than 2. The idea being is that if it gets caught with debris in one of the engines, it can continue to run. But for commuters, probably the most important point is this vessel now has a toilet, which is very important indeed. Dave Russell, ITV News on the Isle of Wight.
Now, we'd all like to think we'll keep active into a ripe old age, wouldn't we? Being independent and hopefully still driving our cars.
Well, there's one pensioner who is setting an extraordinary example to the rest of us. Giovanni Rozzo is still behind the wheel and he's 103 years old.
Well, he told our reporter Russell Hookey he'll keep on driving so long as he's safe.
On first sight, Giovanni Rozzo looks like a man in his 70s. That being the case, it wouldn't be unusual to see him regularly using his car. But despite his youthful looks, Giovanni is actually 103 years old and still on the road.
I have no problem to drive. I drive since I was 20 years old. I was in the Italian army.
So by my calculation, you've been driving for 82 years, is that right?
Yeah, since 1934.
Giovanni passed his test in Italy at the age of 21 and moved to Britain in the 1950s, running a fleet of ice cream vans for almost 3 decades. He also represented a number of Italian organisations in the UK, for which he received Italy's equivalent of a knighthood. Compared to him, his trusty steed is a youthful 24 years old. At 103, some might suggest Giovanni gives up his car. But his granddaughter says while he remains a competent driver, there's no reason for him to do so.
He's not a doddery old driver, he's quite a confident driver. He definitely likes the fact that if he wants to pop to the shops, he can pop to the shops. He goes to the cemetery every day, his wife and son are buried there, so, he likes the freedom that having his licence in a car gives him.
One day, though, the day will come when Giovanni will have to get used to being a passenger. It's not a thought he relishes.
Which would you rather be, the driver or the passenger?
No, I like a better drive. I trust myself more than anybody.
Russell Hookey, ITV News.
Giovanni, 103 years young, and the oldest driver in the world who is still driving is 105, and he lives in New Zealand.
Wow, so Giovanni's got a couple more years to
He's
go.
young.
But anyone older, do let us know.
Now, I'm sure that you've all noticed that the weather has turned noticeably colder in the last day or so. And while it's what we might expect at this time of the year, it's come as a bit of a shock to the system, hasn't it, Luke?
It has, certainly. And not just us, the wildlife in our parks and gardens will be noticing it too. Up until now, the mild winter has meant an unusually plentiful supply of food for the squirrels and other creatures.
And that's why, as our reporter Martin Stew found out, so many are looking a little on the chubby side.
Unlike hedgehogs, dormice and bats, squirrels don't hibernate in winter. Instead, they survive the colder months with an extra layer of fat and a thicker coat.
There's a very porky looking one over there.
A few too many Christmas dinners.
I think so, yes.
According to the urban birder, David Lindo, they're looking larger than ever, having eaten not just all the pies, but all nature has to offer too.
They are famous for their hoarding. During the course of the autumn, for example, I hoard a lot of acorns and other seeds so that during harder times I can come back to where they've hoarded their food, and they've got an amazing spatial memory. But this year, because there's been so much abundant food, they've acted naturally in that they're putting on the weight they need to, but they've actually, perhaps in some instances, actually put on more. This one's a big one.
Lots of seeds, nuts and fungi are the result of the mildest December on record. Not only was the average daytime maximum 5 degrees above average, but the nighttime minimum was 6 degrees above average. That's the reason we didn't have any frost, and it's the reason there is so much food still available. And squirrels aren't the only wildlife being affected by the weather.
When we put our bird feeders out, for example, you may have noticed that there's fewer birds coming. That's because our natural food is actually still available. And many of us have noticed that, for example, there are plants budding now, bulbs are coming up. So it's really unusually warm for this time of year.
With colder weather on its way, they could be thankful for some extra insulation, as long as they're not too porky to escape predators. Martin Stew, ITV News.
From fat squirrels to Slim Simon.
What are you going to say then? I nearly panicked. I am holding a bit of extra Christmas weight, but me, like the squirrels, it's because I eat too much rubbish. As do squirrels. Here's the proof, look, from Sid Saunders in Sussex. There you go. And other interesting squirrel meals I've found in my inbox. Helen Holland in Stenning. What's that? It's actual birthday cake, and it's an actual square. Look, amazing. That was invited to the party, that squirrel. Cecilia in Bournemouth caught one that would appear to like chips, or a chip at least. And here's one that goes a step further. Malcolm Nicholson was in Alaska recently, and this one here was tucking into some smoked salmon.
Posh.
How posh is that?
Yeah.
But not just squirrels. This is Gretel, the hairy armadillo, who lives in Drusilla's Park in Sussex. She too has eaten a bit too much over Christmas, so they've put her on the scales, realised she's 500 grams too heavy, and now she's on a fresh veg diet to lose about a pound.
Like
Poor
me.
soul. Yeah. You haven't got a pound to lose, Luke. But you're our age.
So it's turning colder, and with a weighty forecast now, here's Simon.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France, and us outside a chateau.
Driving to Europe. Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, our unofficial starman tonight is Chris Nesbitt, who took this lovely picture of the night sky last night, reflected over the almost overflowing River Test. And there will be more clear skies to look forward to tonight. Once we get rid of these showers, they're pushing away eastwards, generally quite light and patchy. And then you can see the cloud tends to break up behind, and that means temperatures will take, well, a bit of a tumble. But thanks to the northwesterly wind that's blowing through, bringing the cold air with it, I'll grant you, we should have enough of a breeze to stop frost from becoming too much of a problem overnight, despite the fact that temperatures will get down to around freezing. There will still be some patchy frost around first thing tomorrow morning, but for most of us, it's just a lovely wintry sunshine kind of start to a pretty decent day. There will be good sunny spells as the day goes on, a bit more cloud into the afternoon and a few isolated showers here and there, but lots of dry weather and temperatures slightly up on today, peaking at around 7 or 8 degrees, although it will still feel that little bit cooler than we've been used to. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Ventnor on the Isle of Wight around 25 past midnight and then just after 1:30 tomorrow afternoon.
Eurotunnel Le Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, just before we go, we'd like some help from you.
Yes, the Queen turns 90 this year, and to celebrate there are events happening right across our region.
And we want to hear from you. If you've met Her Majesty and have photos and or video you can share with us. And let us know if you'll be joining the celebrations with a street party. Send us an email to Queen90Meridian, that's all one word, Queen90Meridian, all one word, at ITV.com. Let us know where you are from and please leave a contact number.
Yes, we'll love to hear from you. In just a moment, it's the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.